Welcome to Unspoken, community and business conversations powered by Touch Cleveland. Following last year's racial uprisings, we saw a plethora of Black stories resurface, and it brought to the forefront the importance of knowing our history or being bound to repeat it. Traditionally, Blacks kept history by gathering around their elders and listening to their stories, but today's generation seems to have lost that value. Rose's Living Legends sat down with Cleveland's prominent movers and shakers aged 70 and up to capture their wisdom, experiences, and more importantly, to give them their roses while they're here. In truth and in light, this is Unspoken.
Today we have with us the Honorable Judge Ellen Connally. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So we're going to start right off. Please let the people know, who are you? How long have you been in Cleveland?
Well, I was born in Cleveland. I've lived here my entire life. Other than the 4 years I was living at Bowling Green State University, I have lived here my entire life. So people who have lived in different cities kind of amaze me, but this is my home.
And so what have you done?
Well, I grew up in Cleveland. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas Schools and Notre Dame Academy. And as I said, I went to college at Bowling Green State University. I came back and I went to law school at Cleveland State University, at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And while I was in law school, I worked at a law firm, Stokes, Character, and Perry. So I got to know Carl Stokes and Lou Stokes. And I worked mostly for Judge Carl Character, who was a lawyer at that time. And then I was a law clerk, or a magistrate, or a law clerk at the Cuyahoga County Court of Appeals. And from there, I became a magistrate at the probate court. And in 1979, I was elected a judge at the Cleveland Municipal Court. Now, I was elected straight up. So before me, there had been 3 other Black women judges in Ohio. Judge Lillian Burke was the first Black woman judge. And there had been 2 others, but they had all been appointed, and they're all Republicans. So I was the first Black woman who was elected straight up. So I served on Cleveland Municipal Court from 1980 until 2004. And then after I left Cleveland Municipal Court, I ran for Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, which I was not successful on. And then in 2010, I was elected to the Cuyahoga County Council, the first council for Cuyahoga County, and I served 2 terms as president of council. So I was the first president of Cuyahoga County Council.
So what are you doing now? I mean, you've done everything. What are you doing now?
Oh, I read a lot of books. I'm very involved with the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, where we are now. I'm on the board of the Ohio History Connection, which was formerly known as the Ohio Historical Society. I visit a lot of presidential grave sites before COVID. And I'm involved in the Cleveland Civil War Roundtable. I'm on the board at Community Action Against Addiction, which is a methadone treatment program. So I do a lot of work there. And I'm also involved with the League Park, the baseball museum up at League Park. So I always got lots of things going, and people calling me and talking politics to people. So
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. So what would you say you are best known for, or what do you feel like has been your most significant contribution?
Well, I guess I'm best known for as being a judge. And I think probably my most significant contribution, as I think about it, was I think I opened the door for a lot of other Black women to be elected. As I said, I was the first one that was elected straight up. And after I was elected, Stephanie Tubbs Jones and Una Keenan and Mabel Jasper, and there's quite a few Black women judges on the bench now. So I think I opened the door because I showed them that it could be done.
What is one of the most significant moments in history that you've witnessed, anywhere in the world?
The assassination of John F. Kennedy. I am a Kennedy assassination buff. Now, Oswald did it and he acted alone. But Judge Burt Griffin, who's a judge, retired judge of the Common Pleas Court, he was an attorney for the Warren Commission. So he and I have done a lot of research for him. We give seminars for lawyers on the Kennedy assassination and raise legal issues that would have come about if Oswald had gone to trial. I just published a book review of a new book by Dan Abrams about the trial of Jack Ruby, the Oswald assassin, and we should have published in the next couple of days an op-ed that Judge Griffin and I wrote about the Ruby trial. So I think I own probably just about every book written on the assassination. And it's something I probably do research or deal with just about every single day of my life. So the most that, and I know I used to say that every time I'd been to Washington, I had been to the Kennedy gravesite. I went to the Kennedy gravesite a week after the assassination, but now I've been to Washington on other things and haven't made it, but I've been there many, many times.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I know things about the Kennedy assassination like probably nobody else knows. So.
Wow. I need a story on that all on its own.
Yeah. It's. I was dealing with the Ruby trial. I was refreshing my recollections about that, but yeah, I've done all kinds of research. I've been to the house where Oswald lived, the rooming house where he lived. I've been to the house where I sat on the bed where he, like the last night he slept in the bed and all kinds of stuff. Been to the 6th floor museum and met different people that were involved in the assassination.
We're going to have to make sure we promote that book at the end as well, if that's okay.
Well, Judge Griffin is writing the book,
okay.
But this is the book review that I wrote. But
so what would you say is one of the most significant moments you've witnessed here in Cleveland?
Probably the election of Carl Stokes. I remember that quite, I was in college, and I remember that was, like really a big thing. And I had, after I think one summer I worked at City Hall as a clerk. So yeah, that was a very, very big thing to see Carl Stokes elected. And I had worked in the campaign a little bit, so.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm like, I knew you probably had something to do with it.
Yeah, I worked a little bit because I worked in the law firm, so we did a little bit different things.
Literally a walking history book. Is there something about life or society that you thought would be different by now, or that maybe is a little farther along than you thought it would be?
I never anticipated the Trump presidency. I'm a student of presidents. We're currently just finishing a biography of Jimmy Carter, and I read biographies of most of the presidents. I've been to a bunch of presidential graves. I never anticipated the sub rosa level of racial disparity from the Trump administration. I mean, you kind of always know that there was some prejudice, but the people that have come up that I feel have been egged on by Trump, I think it's very, very disappointed. And people that that I considered friends, and I found out they voted for Trump, like I don't want to be your friend anymore. Because you can't be a Trump supporter and be my friend,
So I'm curious, with you being a scholar of presidents, who would you say has been the most influential president?
Well, of course, Lincoln, by all ends, and I've studied a lot about Lincoln, but FDR certainly changed America. LBJ is underrated in terms of what he did in terms of the Great Society. Lyndon Johnson. Yeah, Lyndon Johnson. Okay. Yeah. In terms of the legislation and civil rights legislation that he got through. So all of those are important. And like I said, I'm reading this book about Jimmy Carter, and the things he did. Like he was the first president to acknowledge global warming and changes in the environment. He and his wife did a great deal in terms of mental health. He saved a lot of national parks and for the ecology. So each president has their own contribution. But of course Franklin Roosevelt was president for so long. He was president for almost 4 terms, and took us through World War II.
So we're in this Biden administration currently. I don't want to put you on the spot as far as maybe how you may feel about him, but just as far as whoever we see next after the Biden administration, what do you feel like the nation needs most out of a president right now?
Well, I think that Biden was the right person. There's a theory that you go from extremes. You go from from Obama to Trump, and then Trump to Biden. I think that one of the important things about Biden is his experience in Washington. It was one of the theories of Jimmy Carter because he had not been a Washington insider, so he didn't know. Johnson was able to get things through Congress because he knew the inner workings of government. So I think that that's a great advantage for Biden. I tend to think he will not do a second term because of his age. So then we have to worry about who's going to succeed. Hopefully it would be Kamala, but you never know.
Is there anything that is actually farther along than you thought it would be?
I don't know of anything farther along. I think that...
Have we made progress in any area that you feel like, I would have never expected this would have come this far?
Probably like cell phones.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, cell phones, I never thought that, and computers. I mean, I don't know what I did with my life before I had a computer. I really don't. Yeah. And I never thought that I would be, my first computer was like, I don't know, however many years ago. And now I have I'm very much wedded to my desktop, but then I have the laptop over here, and I have a tablet which I don't really use that much. But then you have the cell phone so I never thought. And GPS. I mean, I was a map person. My dad, we would go on trips. My dad would make us map out a trip. So now you just put the thing in, it tells you where to go, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, microwaves, I never thought about, you'd have a microwave, you can just zap stuff. But I think the telephone. Yeah, because, you used to, like in the comic book, you look at Dick Tracy, he's talking to his watch. Well, I actually have, I didn't wear mine today, but I mean, I do have the watch. I can talk on the phone on my watch, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I can recall still having the text, or at least when texting was new, and then now my 5-year-old nieces are doing it like it's second nature, and I'm like, okay,
yeah, I had to be kind of dragged into text. But I don't do like Instagram and tweets. I don't do those. But
is there anything that you wish you would have done?
Probably finish my dissertation. I am all but dissertation for a PhD in history, and I kind of putzed around and dropped out, and probably wish that I had finished that, but that's not major. Maybe run for common pleas court, be a judge on a different court. But I think all in all, I don't regret the life that I had. I was on municipal court. I liked it. I think I did a lot of good for people. Sometimes I went in the federal building one day, and the security guard said, "You can go through." And I go like, "What did I do to you?" He says, "I was in your court one time, and you gave me a break." I mean, he wouldn't tell me what I did. He said, "But you gave me a break," and he says, "I have this job today because you gave me a break."
Wow.
So here's a guy that he's got a wife and a family, and he's supporting himself, because I must have given the first offender program or did something. I don't know what I did. So yeah, I think about or people say like when you worked at probate court, you really helped me out, or so that makes you kind of feel good.
Yeah, I mean, it can make a big difference in somebody's life. So we appreciate having people that look like us.
Yeah. Or people that have some compassion,
Yeah. So I'm curious too. Did you already have the topic for your dissertation already?
Yeah, I kind of got. The advice I give people is you start when you start working on your master's, you decide your dissertation topic. So every paper you write, you kind of you always have a chapter there. I was looking at this issue of treason and the Civil War. The ultimate legal question of the Civil War is secession treason. And I really kind of just got bogged down, and I didn't really find the right information, and I started doing other things. But I'm still curious about that, and I sometimes think I should go back to Akron, and I kind of blame Akron. They didn't really give me the right guidance and stuff. But
success and treason in the Civil War, yeah, that sounds like a lot to unpack.
Yeah, well, I had done this major research project. It was published in actually in the Journal of Supreme Court History, on the legal proceedings against Jefferson Davis after the Civil War. I'm probably the only African American in the world who's ever written about Jefferson Davis. But yeah, this question of Jefferson Davis was actually tried for treason, and the case was disposed of. But it's an interesting question.
So because we talked about Trump and so many of the presidents, and the election of Carl Stokes, believe it or not, has come up in every single interview
really?
we've had. Like, that has been hands down the number one thing that people have been proud to have witnessed. And so, you know, it got us off on a tangent in our last interview just about this divide now that's coming amongst the African American community on Republican and Democrat. How do you feel about that?
I don't have a whole lot of use for black Republicans. I really don't. Sorry, but I just don't. The divide is, like, I wrote an article I write for Cool Cleveland. That's one of the other things I do. I write for Cool Cleveland. And I wrote this article about Juneteenth. And I said that Juneteenth is a wonderful holiday, but we don't need another day to sit around and barbecue. That it should be National Register to Vote Day. Take your child to the library, read a book about slavery, you know, have a seminar on entrepreneurship, you know, go help Mansfield Frazier in his vineyard, you know, do something like that. And some woman who I don't even know, some black woman, told me I was a Karen, that I was a white woman that didn't know anything about black people, and you know, and so it's interesting. Various things will come up, and people have different views. Like there was the story was in the news a couple weeks ago, where there was a teacher, it was like in Oregon or someplace, and she had the children take a raw bowl of cotton and show how difficult it was to pick out the seeds. Everyone in the class had to do it. And these were children who were living in Oregon who have never seen cotton growing. You may have seen cotton growing if you went to see your relatives in the South or something. But most of these children would never see cotton growing. And it was it's a difficult task, and it shows the importance of the cotton gin. So when Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin, that it then mechanizes the process of taking the seeds out of the cotton and increases the growth of cotton in the South. Well, this black woman, actually was a white woman with biracial children, she just raised all kind of hell and thought this was terrible and racist. I'm like, why is that racist? Yeah. And so then I was like, you know, writing like to some of my friends, and some of my friends who agreed said, oh no, that's racist. I was like, well, why? I thought the teacher should have gotten an award. Now, if she'd said to the black children, you're the only you know, but everybody in the class had to do it. Yeah. So sometimes you think about, and then the other day they had IKEA on Juneteenth. They served like
watermelon and fried chicken.
I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, I thought like, you know, maybe next year have like a freedom cake or something like that. But I kind of thought they were trying, and there were black people on the staff who brought this up. So that was another one, like, you know, there's different sides. So people have different views, you know?
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate. I think that sometimes we give too much power to the wrong things, because a lot of people that we saw on social media was like, I would have gotten my plate and enjoyed my day. Yeah,
I didn't see, like, you know, they weren't just like feeding it to black people. They were, and I said, well, if you can't have that on Juneteenth, then can you have corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day? Or can you have like spaghetti on
we
Columbus Day?
On Cinco de Mayo, like what is?
Yeah, or like tacos or something on Cinco de Mayo, you know.
So how do you feel about the fact that this battle of removing critical race theory from schools while simultaneously we're also being given Juneteenth?
It's really ridiculous. You want to know your history, and you go back, it is what it is. I mean, there was slavery here, so you talk about it, and you talk about it in a proper way so that people can understand. I just read a wonderful book about the Japanese internment. And I learned a lot of things that I didn't know. So you're going to not talk about the Japanese people that were interned. You know, if you're going to talk about land, then let's, you know, all of us should leave and give the land back to the Indians. And we have to talk about what happened, you know, to Native American people. So yeah, that, I don't know, I'm a student of history, so, you know, it is what it is. Judge Adrian just sent me a really interesting article, which I haven't had time to read, but it was about a black guy who they really think was the first Lone Ranger. He was a sheriff, and and I was reminding him about how, like the first black person that went to the West Point, a guy named Oliver O. Flipper, and then after he was made an officer, then he was kind of like dogged out and kind of kicked out of the service. Same thing that happened to the first black guy that went to Annapolis. But all these things happen, so you just have to,
Do you feel like we're in danger of repeating any of our history?
Yes, I'm very, very concerned about that. When I went to Bowling Green State University in 1960, it was the fall of 1963. I lived in a room with like 5 other girls, and I was the only African American, and there was an African American girl that lived next door, and I came back to the room and everybody was getting dressed to go somewhere, and I was like, where's everybody going? And they were like, oh, they were kind of hedging. Well, they were all invited to some sorority rush. And I say this, and I didn't mean to disparage her, and I said, even the Chinese girl got married. Well, I shouldn't have said that to diminish her, but she wasn't a citizen. She barely spoke English. I think she was a communist, and she got invited to a sorority party. But me and the African American girl next door, we were the only 2 on the floor that were not invited to one sorority party. So, of course, and I eventually got to be president of the Board of Trustees of Bowling Green. So I was not very kind to sororities and fraternities. But, you don't really kind of forget those kinds of things,
And you feel like we're just kind of on that same trajectory now with the discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But I say, on the other hand, I'm a sorority sister of Kamala Harris, and I'm sort of a legacy member. My mother's first cousin was in the first class of the AKAs at Howard University, and my mother was at Howard University in the 1930s as an AKA. So I'm a member, but I don't really participate, but I am essentially a legacy member.
If you could leave everyone with any advice, just based on your experiences, your historical perspectives, if you could leave the whole world with any advice, what would it be?
I think I would have studied harder and read more. Yeah, and maybe be more careful with your selection of friends, and take advantage of things like if you're going to school and there's a tutor, take advantage, and don't think that you know everything. That there's a lot of people, you can learn something from everyone. So, get off your cell phone. Like, we have people come here to the monument, and I'm trying to give them a tour, and they're like on their cell phone, and I go like, would you put your cell phone away?
I'm trying to get Instagram footage instead of actually listening.
Yeah, or they're checking their email or something, So I think I read a lot, but I probably there are years that sometime I probably wasn't reading as much as I could. So there's libraries that are free. I mean, there were times when black people couldn't go to the library. So we have a wonderful county library. We have a wonderful Cleveland Public Library. We have libraries all over. So turn off your TV and read, and don't watch all these idiot TV shows.
I do share that with a lot of the small businesses, and just throw this in as a quick note, the library is definitely one of the places I've recommended. People say there's not any resources out here for small businesses. The library is literally the #1 spot that I would recommend, along with the Urban League, of course. The Urban League and the library, I think, has been the main 2 resources for me the entire 6 years I've been in business. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
They need to hear it from as many people as they can. Well, Judge Ellen Connally, I really, truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. It's been so important for us to recognize individuals, again, who we feel like have paved the way. And we want to give you your roses while you're here. That's what.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Kofi, would you do the honors for me, please? So when I say we want to give you your roses,
oh, wow.
while you're here, we mean that literally.
Oh, thank you.
And this is just thank you again for taking the time to speak with us and sharing your wisdom and your experience.